Hello and welcome back. Today we're at Zolder for round 3 of the OOR Sprint series. Before we get into the video, be sure to subscribe for more content like this and follow me over on Twitter to stay up to date with my latest projects. Round 3 was to be a super sprint once again, 2 races, 2 qualifying sessions. Jumping into Q1, I was very happy with my last lap, breaking my personal best by 2/10. It was definitely a great lap for me. Race 1 was to be our first night race of the series. With a tight circuit and the huge grid, the start was going to matter a lot. The lights go out. And in turn 1 we already have contact. The pack settles and the Lamborghini and Audi in front of me begin to fight into turn 3. I see an opportunity developing, but I have no idea what lane to pick. I jump between the two, and before the corner I finally decide to commit to the inside line. The Lamborghini gets a hefty shove from the AMG behind it. It runs off track and causes a BMW ahead of me to collide with the Audi, causing an even bigger collision between itself and said Audi. I'm able then to slip past all 3 of them for the moment. Unfortunately, my pace was an issue, and sticking with the large pack was difficult. Soon, a NSX would have a moment and I would gain a few more places. Soon after, there would be another close call between an Aston and a GTR. Left me in an awkward position, having to yield to the BMW, placing me under pressure from the NSX behind me into turn 4. The curb would prove too much to handle for me and the car, and thus the NSX gets the better exit and I drop another position. This time though, I was able to stick with the NSX for many laps. His slower pace was an issue for me, but due to the narrow track, an overtaking opportunity seemed highly unlikely. And after a while, a Lamborghini would also join us. He was even faster than myself, and this resulted in some interesting moments and frustration for both of us. Eventually, I got a run on the NSX down into the second chicane. He would lose the rear end, but the Lamborghini behind was a little too fast on the exit. After my narrow escape with the NSX, missing him with millimeters to spare, the Lamborghini would give me a shove, and thus I collide with the NSX, causing him to lose the rear again. This time, the Lamborghini and I get past, and we continue our battle with each other. Taking a second look at the incident here from above, you can see just how close things were from total disaster for all 3 of us. With 2 laps to go in the race, the Lamborghini would finally get past, not without a fight though. He's just able to get on the brakes that little later than myself, and this sets him up for the pass into the hairpin. As I attempt to force him to the outside during the rundown to the final couple corners, we're just millimeters away from colliding. In the end, he makes the pass stick in the final 2 corners there, and that was that. final lap, I get very close into the second chicane, but I just can't make a full move. And this brings us to the end of race 1. Taking all things into account, a good race. My lack of pace in the dry once again causing a very big problem for myself. I'm just struggling to find out where I'm losing this time and how I can improve. And right now that is bugging me a lot. I went into Q2 but performed very poorly, meaning I would start on the second last row for race 2. This time it would be a fully wet race with rain sticking with us all the way through. Surprisingly, there were no incidents into turn 1, but it would all fall apart into turn 2. As the McLaren and Ferrari collide, it would set the tone for the remaining 39.5 minutes of this race. I decided to make a run on the BMW, but leaving plenty of space and adding a good dash of caution in there too. My teammate leaves the door open and I take the position. Cars collide once again and the safety car is called. It would be about 2 laps until the race would restart. On the restart, I was able to get a great start and I had a run on the McLaren down that first section of the straight. And I chucked it in there going into the chicane and I held on for dear life and I got the job done. I soon noticed I had some serious pace in this race. I was busy placing Bushel under pressure in the Nissan, or trying to at least, when he and the McLaren ahead decided to take their fight off track. Taking 2 more positions, this race was making up for Silverstone race 2, and that was for sure. It was not more than 4 laps later when I would pass the next casualty. At the time I had no idea what happened. You can see here in the background I'm that little BMW speck on the left there, but the Lamborghini and the Audi in front here collide on the exit. I assumed this was due to some wheel spin, and I was fortunate enough not to get involved at all. When up ahead, on board with the Bentley, he goes off track due to what seems to be an incorrect timed shift and running a touch too wide on the grass there, allowing me to nab another position for free. As I entered the second chicane, another car ahead goes off, this time a Ferrari. On board with him, you can see he just made a minor error into the chicane and they got onto the power a little too quickly while on the paint there. Remember this. After all that, I would be involved in a 3-way battle for a while with one of my BMW teammates and a Lamborghini, who proved to be a little bit of a hindrance for both of us. My frustration soon led me to my first mistake. In the draft of the Lamborghini, I would brake a touch too late and run really wide in the second last corner, punishing me down that start-finish straight, allowing a Jaguar to attempt a move on me, but I let him. And as he does this, he runs very wide. And this opens the door to the Bentley behind him into turn 2 to make a move on me. He begins and cuts in front of me, putting me off, and I try and avoid him while we are exiting the corner, while preventing a huge slide on my part. It was all a bit sketchy at the time. I was very nervous again about what the Jaguar would do as he comes in front of me and slams on the brakes, and I just wasn't sure what he might do the next time I tried to pass him or what was going to happen next. A few laps later, the Jaguar and the Bentley would swap places in a very sloppy moment for both drivers. I will say that racing the wet is not easy, and despite how this went, both drivers done very well not to have made it any worse. As we head into turn 1, I'm able to carry more speed than both drivers. This opens the door on the Bentley for me into turn 2. Not able to get the move done, but I stick with him. And again during the exit phase, the Bentley just loses pace, and I do what I can to avoid him, but the slightest bit of contact sent him on his way. And directly after all that, I enter the second chicane and disaster. I get it a little wrong and the bump unsettles the car and round I went. This was lap 16, about 31 minutes into our 40-minute race. I was super upset with myself for getting the turn wrong. I thought my great race had come to an end. I was able to get going again, and I said to myself, now is not the time to lose it. A lap later, the one Bentley retired from the race and the charge was back on. As we head into turn 1, I have yet another even sloppier moment. I attempt to pass the GTR into turn 1, and judging from the last few laps, I assumed that the Jaguar would run a little wide and the GTR would brake sooner. In the end, I got it wrong. I got it very wrong. And I think the Lamborghini that spun off there didn't help me either. I only noticed him very late, after I already collided with the Jaguar. I soon after received a 15-second penalty. And I looked at the timing screen when I noticed the car behind me, the Jaguar, had a 5-second penalty. At this point, there were 2 laps left in the race for us. I decided to no longer fight with Bushel and the GTR, but try and make up 10 seconds. A mammoth task, but I knew I still had some pace. On the last lap into the second last corner, that is where it all hung by a thread. I'd managed to cobble together a 10-second gap, but the AMG in first was on my inside, and he needed to be let through. Any sort of a mistake here, or being slowed down a touch too much, would mean that I would drop an entire position. Heading into that corner, I had a 10.3 second gap. 0.3 of a second, that's all that stood between me and 19. Somehow as we crossed that line, I held on to my tiny margin and held on to 18th. 2 great races. I was very pleased with my performance during both races. However, these 2 races highlight once again my huge lack of pace, but more so in the dry. I mean, I spun in race 2 and yet made up all that time. I made a few errors in race 2, but I never dropped off my pace. I kept getting faster. I'll really need to work on my overall driving, but mainly try and find where I'm losing in the dry. I just can't figure it out. Well, that brings us to the end of another video. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, cheers.